finance, right? It's bribery, it's the sort of dollars, right? But there's another part of this that's maybe more complicated. The gift economy, what is that? Not Lucas or Akina. What is the gift economy?
Oh, yeah, it's like building relationships, I think. It's more subtle than cash, kind of more sentimental, I guess, or something that sort of can fly under the radar.
Okay?
I believe it's like the example which we just showed was paying for like games, tickets, and golf, other stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so there's money involved in your
Yeah.
example. Okay, in your example, it's more relationships.
There's also legislative subsidy, which is like trading and offering your expertise on these very complex policy issues.
Yeah. So remember, I think we talked about this. So I am a legislative assistant in a congressional office. In a congressional office, you might have maybe 3 legislative assistants dividing all the universe of policy issues. That's a lot, right? So, and it's just me and maybe an intern, right? So, how do I keep informed? How do I keep track of what's happening and who cares about this and all that kind of stuff?
There's also a general feeling of like friendship that develops too, which makes it a little bit hard to detect how
Right.
sort of corrupt it is.
Right, so continue with my scenario. How do I keep informed on, let's call it education policy? I read the National Journal, I see what bills are going.
You might happen to have a friend who's an expert in that policy area, but you didn't know that they're also getting paid by.
No, it's much more overt than that. So the National Association of Bilingual Education comes in for a meeting and they tell me all kinds of stuff and I go, wow, man, that was really helpful. And the next time I have a question about bilingual education, I'm gonna call them up, right? When I worked for National Council of La Raza, I lobbied the Hill on free trade. And I was good at it. And so, you know, anytime there was a question on this particular thing, staff knew to call me. So, and by the way, it's not always sort of out to K Street. It's also, you know, when a staff decided he was going to go off to grad school, he called me and said, "Do you want my job?" So it is a revolving door, but it revolves in both ways. People go off the hill and on the hill and back out again. But so, it's not that, it's intentional, right? People come to your office and make themselves useful. And they might be lobbyists for a lobby firm, and they might be a nonprofit or advocacy, whoever it is. That's their job, right? That's going to be much harder to police. Is that bad? First of all, do we need to police it? Is that bad?
Like you need that.
You need that.
You can't expect, if you're a congressman and you got 3 legislative aides, you can't expect them to know everything about every single issue. That's insane. And so like you need those experts in certain fields to offer their advice on certain issues.
You need it, but you need multiple opinions. So that's the difference. I mean, I don't expect you to know everything, but if you're in a public office, you should almost have to call 3 sources, or, you know, and then list who they are on your website. I mean, yes, one organization has an opinion about how something should get done, but it may be completely different than 99% of everyone else, or it might be in line with what is best, but that needs to be vetted.
I mean, and they do have other people who have opposing views. And it's their job to actually offer that opposing view to that congressman. If that's a congressman that they're trying to lobby.
So this is Open Secrets. It sorts all kinds of things. They look at campaign dollars, but they also look at who lobbies, what issues get lobbied on. So it's kind of interesting to look at the pharma. It's just massive, huge dollars. And this is, you'll notice it peaked, and look at 14, it's way down. But still, I mean, look at 13. right? Why do we still have people spending so much money on healthcare lobbying in 2013?
Well, implementation of the ACA, but also.
ACA is a cash cow for lobbyists, right? Because it's all, the devil's in the details. So that's the other thing to remember is passage is not the only goal, right? And that's when those relationships are so valuable, because then you can come back in and say, hey, you know how, sort of, we wanted to do this with this bill, well, actually, we need to tweak it a little bit. Or having lobbyists with the expertise to interact at the regulatory level. That's really expensive. Those people really need to know what they're talking about.
I was trying to look at where you're at. Did you go by industries?
Yeah, I looked at industries, so right here, lobbying industry. And then, so this is on lobbying disclosure. They get this from multiple sources, but remember when I said that you have to register as a lobbyist? You have to actually register. It's a self-policing kind of system, which is a bit of a problem. So you have to register with the Senate, and you have to say what issue. So if you're a lobbyist, for example, let's see if I can.
Is that only looking at people who lobby on the federal level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Each state rules are different.
So the gift economy is very complicated. So according to Lessig, this is bad, right? Why is it bad? Why does Lessig think it's bad?
I mean, it's a lot harder to regulate, like you were saying, or to even moderate. Like, how do you tell someone that making friends with another person is wrong or illegal? You can't.
I think, for years and years, Lawrence Lessig probably didn't sleep at night because there's really no way to connect yays and nays, to connect actual votes with dollars. You just can't do it because there's so much that happens before that point.
Oh, I think you asked why it was problematic, and it just leads to a disproportionate amount of influence in government comes from lobbyists. So they just have a bigger say over what happens than other people.
And Lessig really worries that it erodes public confidence. That's his big concern. Do you agree? And Ezra Klein does not necessarily agree in this article, right? What's the counter argument to that?
What's Ezra Klein's argument? Is that these lobbyists are really influencing legislation at the margins, so things that are big ticket items ultimately fall in line with the electorate. But still, he's blaming the influence on the minutiae as fundamental to the gridlock and why people consider DC not to be effective as well.
So he makes he gets a little in the weeds on this, but he says, Lessig is saying that that the public distrust is a result of this behavior. And this behavior was particularly started, as we saw, in sort of 95 or so. But Klein says public confidence was going down way before that. So you can't connect the two things, right? If you actually look at the numbers, it's nice to be able to say, oh, this is really destroying public trust, but the numbers don't actually say that necessarily. So the timing of it doesn't work. He also says that, as you say, and as you've said about Abramoff, money can't really impact the big issues, right? That if this is a huge Republican agenda driver, or if this is something the Democrats are putting all their political capital in, the money can't really change that. Do you agree? Like Abramoff was really successful getting little tiny things in the general scheme of things done for his clients. That's what earmarks are. Earmarks, if you look at the dollars, it's nothing, right?
But the aggregate of those becomes problematic. Maybe in discrete sort of independently, they might not be that big of a deal, but when you add them up, they definitely become more substantial.
Okay,
Well, it goes back to the new, different types of lobbying, like, what you, green astroturfing, or, it's a whole different type of lobbying. Lobby for the votes, don't lobby the legislator. And that can affect big issues. Think about how many people are voting against things in the Affordable Care Act, or thinking they are against things in the Affordable
Okay,
Care
so
Act,
I
but
think-
they're actually there to help.
I think
them.
what Klein would say is, Democrats wanted Affordable Care Act, Democrats got Affordable Care Act. We're done here,
Glossing over that.
okay?
I was also a little skeptical about Klein's argument, just because it seemed like he gave a couple examples, like how even though big banking industries like oppose credit unions still exist. I think for every example, like every small example he gives, you could also say that, well, banks also won the bailout. So they might have lost one small victory, but they won a pretty, I would say a pretty substantial one.
Did you see that story this week about the AIG CEO suing the Fed? Because he feel like they weren't treated sufficiently equally in the bailout? They didn't get as much as other people did when they got bailed out? It's astounding, especially after I just finished reading The Divide and then I read that article. Astounding, sort of they're living in a different world, but I digress. So okay, go back.
Yes, they do have influence on the big issues as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, because
I mean-
let's, sorry.
I was gonna say, they lobbied hard for the bailout, but the first vote didn't pass. So, sure, the second vote passed, but after the market went down even further the next day. But if you're going by that first vote,
But the fact
Yeah,
So
that
lobbying
let's
didn't
talk
work.
about healthcare reform, because that's sort of a,
Yeah, I feel like the bailout was more of a reaction to something that had to be happening.
There was
Healthcare
some-
reform is a bigger,
Right.
political
it
football.
was a political, that's right, it was a political sort of, this is part of what Democrats believe is good for the country kind of thing, right? So we got it, yay, victory, right?
Except for all the nuance put in there by the pharmaceutical industry and insurance companies who are the biggest lobby.
So if lobbyists can get single payer off the table,
Right.
isn't that kind of a big deal?
Yeah.
Right, so, and I think a lot of it's in the detail, right? Not only what did they get in their, sort of whatever passes, but what did they not, and what did they avoid? How many things are status quo that they quite like that? Thank you very much.
One of the other things that Klein alludes to as being kind of disturbing is how often on these issues, or some of these things that we don't even know are issues, the lobbyists kind of come out in front, and there's no opposing side to it, and they get what they want before anything is even put together, and then they draft the bill. We don't necessarily know about that, which it implies that it's more pervasive than the simplified idea that it's just the cash cow.
Isn't that the most uplifting of my classes? All right, so let's talk about affluence and influence, because that sort of, let's talk about citizen voice and who gets heard. I'm going to let you answer these two questions in groups, and then we'll talk about them together. Affluence and influence is the Martin Gillens.
I didn't know.
Chapter 1.
Yes.
I'm okay with both. Maybe I'm the only one.
So let's talk about that. We haven't
I was pretty I read
Right, kind of comes out, pushes back and says, so you can kind of like the few things, right, that was one strategy, you would say I agree with this purpose, or I agree with race, I'm going to defer to race, food stamp issue, across the, so it's all these solutions that are the same
Yeah.
thing that any more citizen would have to run, like how do they still make good civic choices without?
You can ask that, it's short, and you watch out what she's talk about it.
This question.
That's good. You work on that.
I
know, not
that.
Your question, I guess, it's asking.
Yeah.
Like more
Today there's, right now, actually, Secretary of State is like,
This is an
one
argument
of
for
the
Ron.
Department of Engineering, he's the guy who started doing
If we need more politics.
And then that started that one
Engineers,
podcast. But I want to make sure there's no.
We need to actually, so that way if you
So
have
obviously,
education people.
Yes.
Instead of just a lawyer.
What's I ran back to work, figured out my.
Maybe that's, maybe it's the lawyers.
Last question, she mentioned that it's end of the month, yeah.
Still, I'm.
So you're talking about
Alright, so honestly, so it's asking, our citizens.
Sorry, your topic is citizen mind.
Yeah.
Mine is about
I should have done. Becomes the latest thing. Although I guess you could say, well, the Alien Sedition Act was the first bill.